So today I just wanted to take a fairly quick look at Killer Party, the 1986 film released by MGM. It's a fairly basic film, very simple plot, not too much detail going on there. We have some sorority girls, or some potential sorority girls, pledging a house. They eventually do get accepted, but we later find out the only reason one of them was chosen is because one of them actually pulled a prank during the initiation, which pretty much scared everyone. She had a few things set up on wires or motors in order to simulate that the house that they were in was haunted, since that location, it's a I guess a burnt down abandoned house, has the reputation of being haunted because one of the previous occupants was into occult practices. It definitely falls into the prank genre of film. The beginning itself pretty much just tries to pull one over on the audience. It's very interesting. We open up with a funeral scene. Obviously, somebody goes back to tell off the dead person. They get sucked into the coffin and cremated. And from there we realize that we were actually watching a movie within a movie. From there, the girl steps out of the car from the drive-in, goes to grab some popcorn. We wind up in another horror type sequence in where she's being pursued by some serial killer, and then the movie breaks into a music video for the movie. So we have some sort of triple Inception stuff going on here, which is mildly amusing, I guess, if you're into that. Once the song does end, we realize, yes, it was a music video for the movie, but it was actually one of the main characters actually watching a music video herself on television. So very interestingly played the way that was approached, but mildly annoying. So we finally do get to the movie, and as I said, we do have a few girls pledging a sorority house. So Vivia, who happens to be I guess the more mousy of the three, she was the one who had pulled the prank and was only let into the sorority because of her prank abilities. Not too much interesting stuff happens here and there. Obviously the girls are made to say or do a few things here and there. The film also does feature some pranking by a nearby fraternity. Somebody poses as a delivery man, drops off a case of champagne. Meanwhile, he manages to sneak his way into the house, rigs the doors, and then they dump a jar of bees in the backyard because you have nude women in a jacuzzi, so obviously they're ready with their video cameras. So we get our first glimpse of nudity within the first 16 to 17 minutes of the film, 16.48 minutes if you want to look for that very specific scene, because whatever. You have your own reasons, nobody needs to know. There are various pranks within the film as well. The film also seems to, in some senses, use strategic angling or shots to not only just set up foreshadowing, but they kind of, in a sense, also tend to mislead the viewer in order to thinking that the event is happening sooner than it actually will occur. So I also do find that interesting as well. It's not a badly written story, it's actually decent dialogue, good actors. It's just a very basic plot. No complaints. It obviously does have its own cult status as well. It is an independent film. The film itself, I believe, was shot in Ontario, Canada. I'm not really too sure about which locations exactly had been used. I was definitely very surprised to see Paul Bartel in this film. Most of you may recognize him from Roger Corman films. He is a regular. But in this film he does play a professor. He obviously also meets an untimely end. I definitely thought it was just very definitely interesting seeing him in this film. There's a scene where they're having sort of a recap on the dangers of hazing, I guess just before Hell Night occurs, just warning certain people to not overdo it with the hazing. So obviously during the scene we have a replay of the jacuzzi prank, which does come up. Paul Bartel's character throws himself in front of the projector to cover up the projector, which is even more hilarious because his hands are coming up and you're seeing the view that everyone else is seeing, so it looks like he's being this dirty old man just trying to grab the women on the screen. Obviously before he realizes what's going on, he gets up and uses his own body as a shield to cover up the towel scene or the nudity scene. But yeah, I would say that was definitely a very well played scene, very interesting, predictable, but still humorous in its own right. The only other person I recognized in this film, Eileen Wilkes. She played Phoebe. Also later herself became somewhat unfriendly, I guess you could say. She is probably better known for one of her roles in one of the Madonna films, Who's That Girl? She plays one of Wendy's friends, the fiancé of the main character. She also had a role in 16 Candles as well as Blind Date. So the night of the party does come along and they do make their way downstairs for the announcement. That's pretty much when the first prank comes along, in which the doors are shut, everyone gets the impression that they're being locked in, they can't escape. And then the Phoebe character, she's dragged downstairs. Two men get into an argument over whether or not she's worth saving, and eventually just turns into somewhat of a knife fight. We realize that is a prank within itself and no one actually died. Phoebe later returns and nothing had gone on. The party resumes, but shortly thereafter characters start dying off little by little. People kind of go off their own separate ways here and there. It isn't really too long before the entire house is vacated. There's bodies everywhere. The three main characters obviously remain within the house, Phoebe, Vivia, and Jessica. Vivia obviously being the one who had set up the pranks, and Jessica, who it sort of doesn't really make sense in the beginning. After they think they're getting out, or they're trying to escape after all of these murders have taken place, Jessica then becomes possessed by a demon. Upon seeing this, I really wasn't too sure if this was just another prank from within the movie or what the deal was, but there are definitely very crazy special effects. She's crawling up windows, she's foaming at the mouth, she's lashing her tongue about in some super exaggerated Linda Blair type motion. So she's, I don't know, it kind of seems like she's offering sexual favors. I mean, there's just way too much tongue going on. The acting or the special effects for her just seemed a bit too exaggerated. So ultimately we realized that Vivia had been dabbling in some occult as well, or trying to force Jessica to stay behind, as she didn't want to remain in the house, but they wanted her to stay for the party, and obviously they had just been initiated to the sorority. The demon itself obviously being something which had possibly resided in the house within the time of the previous occupant, who had also, as I stated previously, had been into the occult. So it's just very possible there were just tons of things in that house, something got stirred up which shouldn't have. Ultimately, Jessica doesn't meet a very well end, but the demon transfers girls, and the remaining survivor as well as the new inhabited body are put into an ambulance together. One of the girls is begging to not be put in with that same person, which understandable, but what can you do? People just assume you're in shock. Nobody really listens. So yeah, I haven't really heard too many people talk about this film. I'm definitely interested to collect thoughts if you have seen this film, or if your interpretation was different as to how Jessica became possessed or why. I would definitely love to chit chat about that. But that's pretty much all I have for today, and I will talk to you later.